What's up, Strike Team, and welcome back to another episode of Strike Team Official. Now, in this episode, we're going to be going over karate versus other combat sports. And this came to my attention after I posted an Instagram survey. I said, does karate work, yes or no? Now, I was really surprised by the answers. I have a lot of karate practitioners and a lot of other martial artists on my Instagram. But I got way more no's than I expected. And so I ended up going out and reaching out to these guys who were saying no and asking them why. And they all kind of had the same general idea. If you go to boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai or any of these other more combat-oriented sports, they know that within 1, 2, 3 years, a person can become very proficient in their skill set and actually be able to fight. And a lot of the times people see that as translating to street fighting as well. Well, this is not often the case in karate. And so I started really delving in as to why karate was different, which gives it this kind of negative view. So I started brainstorming, writing a bunch of stuff down, and that has led to the video we're going to be going over today. So there are actually 3 things that I recognize that are very, very different between us and those other sports. One is specialization, one is focus, and the other is training methods. Okay, and I think those 3 things are things that we as karateka need to really focus on and try and work to improve if we want to actually be able to compete with these other martial arts in competition and also, just street effectiveness, right? So one thing I'm going to start off with is the focus of karate. Okay, so karate became mainstream many thanks to Genshin Funakoshi, who wanted to push it into the school systems of Japan. Now, to do that, he had to change the way he focused his training, right? He needed to go out to a school board and explain to a school board why karate is beneficial. And so what we did is we took a lot of influence from judo and their whole life philosophy aspects, how karate is deeper and more than just, a combat sport to beat somebody up, but there's a whole life values and self-improvement that you can gain from karate that is a better and bigger help to society. On top of that, in order to kind of make it popular among kids, he wanted to create a combat system or a competition system, not a combat system, a competition system that we could have that was our own. Now, judo already existed with a bunch of throws. Okay, we already have Aikido and things were already out there. So what he did was he focused on what ended up becoming point sparring. Okay, which is the kind of I touch you, tag first style of sparring that karate is very famous for. Introduction of the judo style do philosophies into karate, as well as the point sparring, was a huge influence on how karate became trained in future years. We used kata to mold and develop these positive life traits. The perseverance and hard work that you develop from karate. We used perfection of the kata as the main tool in which to do so instead of combative skill or competing or fighting against others. We focused it on the kata. And when it came to 3-step sparring, we needed something that made sense with the point sparring style of competition we were doing. So 3-step sparring came into existence within the karate stuff from there. Now, while these have their benefits, they also have major drawbacks. Okay, perfection of kata is good, but perfection of kata is not beneficial to self-defense unless you're also perfecting the techniques as when it comes to the dirty street fighting style of techniques within the katas. And instead of doing that, since we're focusing on 3-step sparring, 3-step, bunkai, which is, for those who don't know, if you ever see the pictures where a karate guy punches really long and the guy does a really big outside block and it doesn't seem very realistic to you, that's kind of where it came from, because we were trying to find something that was similar to the point sparring competitions we were doing. So in the situation of karate, the katas and the 3-step sparring were the most important thing, which created the foundation of how many karate schools now train. And what you recognize is karate spends a lot more time on things that are not combat applicable. We spend a lot of times on things that are not useful in actual fighting. They may help develop moral character and perseverance and things like that, but they're not actually teaching you how to defend yourself. And that's not the case in other combat sports. If you go to boxing, everything a boxer does is specifically designed for combat, right? Everything a Muay Thai fighter is training is specifically designed for combat. They spend no time at all on any style of fluff. Okay, anything that's not directly important to what they're doing, they're not spending any time on it. Right? So if you're spending 6 months, a year, 2 years in karate, or 6 months, a year, 2 years in boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, whatever it is, karate's, you're spending, if you're coming into that martial art specifically looking to learn how to fight, you learn things more streamlined and more direct in a lot of these other combat sports. And I think that is actually something that we can actually work on here in karate. A lot of the Do aspects and Do philosophies that you can learn from 3-step sparring, you can still learn them from drilling. You can still learn them from, you can still learn them from drilling with live opponents. You can still learn those things from practicing realistic kata application. But because of the history, we don't do that. Okay, we spend a lot of time in fluff, and that's something that I think we need to really work on and work on fixing. To talk more about that training style difference, karate 3-step sparring, which is, like I said, extremely popular, is not teaching you how to defend yourself against the average person. The person throwing a punch at you is starting from, 5 feet away with a perfect lunging karate punch, and in reality, no one punches like that. So you're drilling things that aren't even useful. When in boxing or Muay Thai or something, someone's actually throwing a real style punch at you, the kind of punch people use in real fights. And so you're getting more used to that. And so it's funny, even in my schools that do 3-step sparring, we always joke within ourselves, we know that it's not the most practical thing on the planet. My instructor will come out and be like, all right, guys, we're gonna practice the 3-step sparring. I want you to try and find something useful out of this. We're gonna focus on these, 3 points and try and find something useful. But he will say straight up that he understands it's not the most realistic style of combat out there. We're doing it for the history, which is fine, okay? But understand it's gonna make it longer for you to become actually proficient in real combat because you're doing these moves for history, not for the actual practical application. And on top of, being focusing on 3-step sparring, there's not nearly enough real pressure testing in most karate schools. And by real pressure testing, I'm talking about practicing a realistic technique against someone who is realistically fighting against you, right? There's not nearly enough of that, but there's non-stop pressure testing in other combat sports. Like I said, again, boxing, jiu-jitsu, whatever, right? There's non-stop pressure testing. There's not nearly enough of real pressure testing here in the karate world, and that's something that we need to work on, okay? Now, as we talk about pressure testing and realistic training styles, another thing that's very different and something that I don't actually think is a problem within karate at all is specialization. Now, boxers specialize in the use of the hands and very specific punches, and they also work within a rule set, right? So if you're gonna go learn boxing, you're specializing in that thing and you're in that one skill, and you're also training it in a very, very streamlined manner. Right now, if you go to kickboxing, you're adding legs. If you're going to Muay Thai, there's a few more things you need to work on, right? But when you're going to other combat sports, they specialize in something in particular. Karate, on the other hand, does not specialize, right? Now, depending on the school, what school you're going to, your school may specialize in something. But karate as a whole has punches, kicks, knees, elbows, throws, takedowns, takedown defense. It has a lot of stuff within the curriculum. And so while you're dealing in combat sports where you're specialized, so you're focusing on one thing to get really good at this one thing, and you're streamlining your educational experience and you're only training using very practical training methods, karate is doing the opposite. We have a wide range of things you need to know. We're teaching you things that are historical instead of practical, and we are adding a lot of fluff within the system. So there's going to be a very big disconnect. If a karate guy with 2 years is fighting a boxer with 2 years, that boxer actually has a way more actual combat experience than the karate guy, right? Now, there's 2 ways you can look at this. I don't actually consider this to be an overall negative. I do think the lack of our streamlined training and the fact that there's so much fluff is a negative, but the lack of specialization can actually become a very good thing depending on the situation. Karate was meant originally as a self-defense art. And even now, if you're trying to take it into a combative standpoint, okay, this lack of specialization can become very useful. Now, once you reach a specific point, say you're proficient in all the different levels that are all the different things that karate has to offer, and you end up seeing yourself in a fight with a boxer, okay, well, obviously you're not going to beat him with your hands, but you might be able to beat him with your legs, right? Now, say you're fighting a kickboxer who has arms and legs. Okay, well, or even now you might be able to go in and clinch them because they're not used to the clinch. Well, karate does have clinch, right? Well, say you're fighting a Muay Thai guy, which actually has, out of all the martial arts, probably the most equivalent tool sets, right? When it comes to striking, they use most of the tools that we use, not the same way, but they also use punches, elbows, knees, and kicks, right? And they have clinch. Well, you're not going to want to clinch a Muay Thai guy. Well, what do you do now? Well, you hit him with a judo throw, right? I myself, like, for those who don't know, I train Muay Thai. I've gone up against MMA fighters. I think I'm in a dominant clinch position. I'm feeling myself, and next thing I know, they hit me in a judo sweep, which most of the time is against the rules because we're doing Muay Thai sparring, but that's not the point. In a street fight, I would have died, right? So that's the thing. A karate guy can then turn around and hit him with that judo throw. Well, okay, say you're fighting a judo guy. Okay, well, a karate guy may not be able to beat him in a throwing match, but he can punch him in the face and hit him with an elbow, right? So the wide range of karate knowledge gives you the ability to find the weakness of your opponent and capitalize on it if you actually train in every aspect that karate has to offer, right? It gives you the ability to capitalize on the weakness of your opponent. And when it comes to a street fight, you're not going to have a lot of time to find out what a guy's good at, right? Street fights are not competition fights. But if you recognize the guy's coming at you swinging with his hands and you're like, oh, this guy's in the first punch, you can say, oh, this guy knows how to punch. Okay, well, let's throw him. Okay, well, let's kick him in the groin. Let's kick him in the knee and figure out where that person's weakness is as quickly as possible and aim toward his weakness instead of fighting toward his strength. And so that's the benefit of the karate ability to kind of touch and deal in everything. Now, the negative is we have to be realistic. We're not going to be able to beat a specialist in what the specialist is good at, all things being equal, right? Obviously, there are some karate guys who might be able to, outkick. They can outkick, a kicker and outpunch a puncher. But for the most part, if all things are equal, same amount of training time, a karate guy who's been doing karate for 10 years is not going to be able to outbox a boxer of 10 years. But he might be able to outthrow him or outkick him, right? So that's the benefit of what karate has to offer. Now, as we talk about specialist martial art forms, there are actually karate styles that specialize as well. For example, Kyokushin styles and offshoots of Kyokushin karate. You have schools that are point stylist specialists, so those who are doing a lot in the point karate style of fighting. And you have groups like Lyoto Machida karate and Kobudo karate as well. So there are karates that also take this specialist thought process. And the benefit of that is a lot of these schools are actually getting rid of a lot of the fluff that I was talking about before. They're usually training in a much more streamlined manner, specifically for the rule sets of their competition. And you do seem to develop a lot faster when it comes to actual combative skills in schools like this. That being said, a specialist school will often have the same weaknesses that I spoke about when it came to boxing and Muay Thai and things like that. A Kyokushin guy isn't used to kicks to the head and he isn't used to clinch, okay? You go to a point sparring guy, he may not be used to the pressure of a full contact fight. And if he is used to that, he may not be used to clinch or whatever, right? So there's always a gap that somebody might find. Even when it comes like Machida style karate, which is really made for MMA, which is one of the more well-rounded areas you can get to, they're not training actively on illegal strikes or throws that you may know, things that you can't do in MMA. And so karate in its totality, when you touch every aspect of what karate has to offer, really covers so much that it's hard, for one, to get that in any one school, but also it would take years to do. In my idea of a perfect karate world and a perfect karate school, right, where it covers every single thing that karate has to offer, for one, I don't know if this is realistic at all, but it would be a place where probably taking a black belt would take 8 to 10 years just to get proficient in everything. You're not an expert, okay? But you're proficient enough that if someone's too good or better than you in one area, you have the ability to switch to another area to hopefully win that fight. Okay, giving you every possibility of winning when it comes to a street fight situation or when it comes to self-defense situation or even possibly combat sports situation, right? And so that would be a place where, it would probably take 8 to 10 years to get a black belt, which you do see in some of these competition schools. And like I said, those schools that take the longer, their guys, most of the time, are decent fighters, right? Because they're taking that time to really understand everything they're doing. So, I would probably take that kind of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu approach to a long black belt, taking a long, long time, and really understanding that it's a long, lifelong goal. Okay, it's not something where you could go and get your black belt in 2 years or get your black belt in 5 years. Even though that's very common and it's not wrong, okay, you're probably coming from a school that specializes in one of the aspects of karate and you've gotten really good at that. So I'm not saying, that black belt's not valid, but just understand that very likely there's gaps in your understanding of the art form. And this isn't me, just trying to be rude. There's a bunch of gaps in my understanding of the art form. Right now, I'm very much trying to work on my throws. I will take the throws. I will learn the throws from my karate instructor and from the kata, and then I'll go to my jiu-jitsu and judo instructors and ask them to help refine it with me, because I understand I'm not perfect. I've been doing this for years, and I'm still trying to make sure I am as well-rounded of a karate practitioner as possible. Because at one point in my life, I know personally I want to go out and teach at a school, and I want to try and make it have the entire aspects of what we're doing. So again, guys, the main reason that when people when I put that post on my Instagram about does karate work, is people don't understand that our lack of specialty and the way in which we train, we do kind of move a little bit slower, right? For the most part. And so when people go and look at boxing and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, they see an insane amount of growth really quickly. Now, even at, like I said, that fictional great karate school that covers everything, we're not going to match the speed of these specialists, because we're trying to learn so much. But over time, it will give us the skill set in which to overcome, hopefully, any obstacle that's put in front of us. And that is why I love karate, because it has so much, but it takes years and years and really a lifetime to truly master. And that is my journey. And I hope if you're watching this, following martial arts, even if it's not karate, but I hope martial arts is your journey too, because I think it's beneficial to life and everything that we're doing. So yeah, guys, I appreciate you guys for hopping on. Like, subscribe, share if you found value from this conversation. If there's anything you agreed with, disagreed with, please put it in the comment section. I will read it, respond. Like I said, we're here at Community to Learn. I don't pretend to know everything, so I'm sure that a lot of you guys will have put down comments that will help me maybe see things from a new perspective. So comment again, turn on notifications, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace.